There is a DPS hero in Overwatch 2 that might just be straight up better than all of their counterparts right now. They are seeing insanely high pick rates at every rank and in both quick play and competitive. They do an incredibly consistent amount of damage, and they're fairly easy to play and pick up, but they do have a pretty high skill ceiling due to the power of their weapon. Hi everybody, I'm Coach Tickety, and today we're going to be talking about Cassidy. We're going to keep things quick today because I've got 15 rapid fire Cassidy tips that we're going to shoot off faster than bullets out of his fan the hammer. God, that was corny, but let's get right into it. First tip is to remember to not waste any of your shots. You've only got 6 rounds in your magazine as Cassidy, and each of them pack quite a punch. But if you spend too much time shooting shields or waste too many shots and have to reload, you might let a target escape with only a sliver of health left when you should have been able to finish the job. So don't get caught spamming for too long, and even if you have your roll ready to reload, you don't want to waste ammo because you might need that roll later on in the fight as well. Now, before we get any further, if you guys are looking to learn even more about Cassidy or any of your target heroes of choice, you should head over to GameLeap.com. Over on our website, you will find hundreds of guides made by top level coaches and more being added every single week. It doesn't matter if you're brand new to the game and are still learning the basics, or if you're trying to push into top 500 this season and really trying to master your heroes, there is definitely something on the site that can help you improve and become better at the game. So click the link below this video or head on over to GameLeap.com and get your membership started today. Next tip is to remember that your primary fire, especially headshots, will out-damage your fan the hammer every single time. It's just straight up more DPS. So unless your target needs that extra bit of burst right away, or you're hitting something without a head hitbox like maybe some shield or wrecking ball, you should prioritize the damage from your primary fire whenever possible. And of course, we can't forget to use our range as Cassidy. This is really important, especially with the recent buff that came through that changed his fall off range of his primary fire. It's fairly common to want to get up close and do damage as Cassidy. He's got that fan the hammer and mag grenade after all, but don't forget to use your range whenever it's appropriate. Unless you're going up against snipers like Hanzo or Widowmaker, you shouldn't be afraid of dueling enemy DPS as long as you can see them and land a good shot. Like I said, it's common to find yourself near the front line as Cassidy, but my next tip is to make sure that you're never the one actually in front. You shouldn't be walking in front of your tank, and you shouldn't be getting aggressive before the rest of your team is ready to follow up. If you do find yourself in front of your team, it's probably because you were trying to close out an aggressive opportunity, but keep in mind that even if you do find that kill, it's probably going to get answered back onto you right away, and you'll be unable to do anything else during the rest of the fight. Some more about positioning, my next tip is to take the high ground between fights whenever you can. Since you don't really have mobility in your kit, I know he's got the roll, but it doesn't really do much. It's hard to take these positions as a fight is starting, so make sure you take the time outside of fights to get that position before the next fight starts so that you can put as much pressure out and control as much space for your team. Keep in mind that you can always give up that high ground positioning later, but it's going to be hard to retake it once the fight starts, so it's better to start there than on the ground. My next tip is to not be afraid of duels, especially duels with enemy DPS. Compared to most backline hit scan type characters, you are tankier, have more burst damage, and are better in close range than all of them. So if you find an opportunity to try and duel an enemy DPS out of position or just get aggressive in general, you should be trying to take it, especially if you're in that close to mid range where you can land your magnetic grenade and actually get some good shots off. Speaking of that grenade, my next tip is to think about the threshold of damage that your kit offers. Your headshot and body shot will deal over 200 damage, and your mag grenade and a body shot is almost exactly 200 damage. This means that if you can hit the shot right before the mag grenade explodes on a stuck target, not even their healers will be able to help them unless they use some really powerful defensive cooldowns. But with that being said, my next tip is that when you're dueling flankers specifically, you should try and save your mag grenade for as long as possible. This is because those flankers will typically have their own defensive cooldowns that can outplay your grenade. Genji can deflect it, Tracer can blink away from it, even Reaper can use his Wraith form to drop it off of his body. So instead, try to force out those cooldowns with pressure from your primary fire first, and then land the easy grenade afterwards when they've got no more options. This should lead to many more kill opportunities. And we've got one more talking about the mag grenade. My next tip here is that even if you stick someone with your grenade, keep in mind that you shouldn't go all in just because you got the stick. You should wait to see the damage come through or any cooldowns be used before you decide to go more aggressive. This is because anything can happen in a game like Overwatch. If you decide to go all in and chase that target who got stuck, they might get healed, they might get cleansed by an ally, they might get defensive resources put reload on them, and you might find yourself out of position instead, so be patient, don't assume that every stick is going to mean a kill. Alright, that's probably enough talk about the mag grenade, no one likes that ability anyway. Let's talk about some other parts of Cassidy's kit. Next tip here is to use your roll for the damage reduction. Now if you didn't know, Cassidy actually gets a 50% damage reduction during the animation of his roll. And his roll is pretty short, so you wouldn't think to use this very often, but that 50% damage reduction is massive. This can help you survive burst opportunities for things like an enemy Cassidy's magnetic grenade, Echo sticky bombs, or even Tracer's ultimate, the pulse bomb. And I know I said Cassidy's roll doesn't really count for mobility, but my next tip is to not forget that you can use it in midair. This means you can use it to jump off a high ground and roll to another high ground. You can even roll yourself up against some walls and get a little bit of extra height depending on the map geometry. There's actually a decent amount of creativity that can be found here for getting to new positions with Cassidy's roll. Just remember that it's not just a reload tool, it can be used for some slight maneuvering whenever the map allows for it. Alright, let's talk about Cassidy's ultimate, his Deadeye. First tip is going to be that you shouldn't be expecting a 5k with every single use of this ultimate. It's really not that strong, and sometimes you're not even expecting to get a single kill with it. But that doesn't mean that this ultimate is bad at finding value. Keep in mind that value doesn't always mean a bunch of kills. Just forcing people out of the way or forcing them to use a bunch of defensive cooldowns is very strong value, and Deadeye is great at that. If the enemies stay where they're standing, they are going to die, so they will need to change up their positions or use a bunch of cooldowns in order to avoid that. Next tip for Deadeye is to, once again, don't forget about the damage reduction. This is great for countering aggressive enemy heroes, especially enemy heroes that don't really do that much burst damage. Picture dive tanks like Winston or Wrecking Ball. In the amount of time it would take those types of tanks to kill you through 50% damage reduction, you will almost definitely charge up that skull on them and you will win the trade instead. This forces them to either back off or, of course, get killed. By the way, Deadeye is probably the best and easiest way to counter an aggressive primaling Winston player. They have no bubble to use to block your Deadeye, and the damage they do with their pummels doesn't really do enough to get you below half HP, so you'll almost certainly win that trade. Next tip is to not be afraid to cancel your ultimate if all your targets are out of the way. Sometimes it's better to pull the trigger early and just reposition or get to a new aggressive location so that you can keep fighting with your primary fire and all your standard kit usage. Again, sometimes value just looks like forcing positions or cooldowns out of the enemy. Once that's out of the way, then you can cancel the Deadeye because you're not going to get any kills anyway and go back to regular team fighting now that those positions and cooldowns are off the table. And my next tip here is a classic. Don't forget that your ultimate can reload your weapon. So sometimes if you're in a duel, it might be better just to pop your ultimate, instantly cancel it just to get that full magazine back when you don't have your roll available and you just need 1 or 2 more shots to finish off a target. If you guys like this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comments what would be some other good heroes to break down like this. Who are your go-to mains that you want to hear some quick rapid fire tips about? If you guys are looking to learn even more about Cassidy or any of your target heroes of choice, you should head over to GameLeap.com. Over on our website, you will find hundreds of guides made by top level coaches and more being added every single week. It doesn't matter if you're brand new to the game and are still learning the basics, or if you're trying to push into top 500 this season and really trying to master your heroes, there is definitely something on the site that can help you improve and become better at the game. So click the link below this video or head on over to GameLeap.com and get your membership started today.